kind of an interesting statistic that just jumped out to me that's kind of caught me off guard that we kind of dig into, see if there's any significance to that. So Nielsen, it was sort of the group, the organization that like tracks a lot of the data for like whenever you see, like Rings of Power has this many million hours watched, like it's all being tracked by this group, which gives you sort of like a bird's eye perspective on, just like what is the entertainment landscape right now? Like what are people watching? What streaming platform, what companies are doing well? And the most recent, they always run a little bit behind. Like the most recent that I have found for their data comes from July, so a month or two ago. And it's significant because it sort of breaks down all the like the ways we watch television. For example, like broadcast TVs were used for broadcast television 20.3%, cable television 26.7%, and streaming 41.4%. So we're inching up to about halfway. Like half of all TV usage is streaming. Streaming definitely is slowly taking over everything, which again we all know that already. What was more surprising is that when they broke down the streaming platforms, like what is the most significant, for the first time, I think ever since they've been tracking this data, YouTube finished number one, which again, you wouldn't think of that. Like you think of like streaming, people watching kind of streaming stuff on their TV, you think, well, Netflix, Disney Plus, like, maybe Paramount, like Peacock or some of those things during the Olympics. I think Disney, as far as they've been tracking this data, has like almost always been number one, or at least has been number one for a very long time. But YouTube finished number one at 10.4% of all streaming on a television. And on a television is an important note too, because this is just like people using their the TV in their living room to watch something, and YouTube was the most. That doesn't count any of the people use YouTube on their computer or their phone, like where I think most people use YouTube, on like other devices in their browser. Like this isn't counting any of that. Like this is just when you're sitting in front of your TV, YouTube is the number one streaming one. And there's some interesting quotes as people are just trying to figure out like, what do you do with that? Like, what do you do with YouTube? Like I feel like YouTube, it's like everyone sort of knows YouTube, and we all know we watch it, but like where does it fit in with like the in the landscape of all these other options? So there's an article I was reading from a Movie Guide where they pulled some data from other sources, but it says some media executives see YouTube as a companion platform to subscriber streaming services and cable TV, an unwieldy behemoth of non-narrative, creator-led content with a social media slant that doesn't really fit the New York Hollywood nexus of professional media. Which was reported by CNBC. Others, even at times, the same executives view YouTube as an existential threat to the entertainment industry, stealing viewership from subscription streaming services, and with it, the cultural center of American youth. And then YouTube's vice president of Americas, Tara Levy, said, I do think it snuck up on people that YouTube was as important a presence in people's lives and people's viewing experiences, not just on the phone, but in the living room. So what do you think? What is your initial takeaway from something? Like, is this surprising to you? Is this not surprising?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Like I feel like I've kind of been saying this for a while, that like we talk about all these shows and movies and stuff, but YouTube is such a big player in sort of the entertainment space. And I think it's for a lot of those reasons that were mentioned. Like there's an intimacy with YouTube, I think, that you obviously don't get from just watching a produced show or a movie. I think it's just way more ever present with people today than a lot of these other entertainment options, because you can watch it on your phone. You can interact with people who just watched the same thing you watched. So there is this social media aspect. I mean, it is a social media company, I think, in many respects, but it's more than that. So it's kind of this weird thing that it's not, YouTube isn't producing things like a Netflix is. It's just the platform for its users to produce content, and you can get the whole range of content on there. Like you can get some really high budget stuff that's narrative driven. You can get really high budget like documentary series on there. You can even rent movies on YouTube, which that's maybe a different sort of category. But then you can get to the very like talking straight to your iPhone kind of vloggy, um, just, hey, this is my day, come get ready with me or whatever. So it's such a range. And so I think it makes sense that like a lot of people are spending more time with YouTube than they are with any of these other platforms. And just from my own experience and with my own family, like oftentimes if we're all sitting down watching something, like it's something on YouTube, more so than it's going to be like a movie or a show on Disney. Like we still watch stuff on Disney and other platforms, but most of the time it's going to be YouTube. Like my parents watch YouTube. Um, a lot of people that I talk to, like they watch YouTube or they follow certain creators on YouTube. And so I don't know where it fits into the broader narrative, but I think it's a way more um, powerful presence, I think, than some of these other streaming.
Yeah, and there is rumors that of the 10.4%, that about 6% of that were actually watching the Faith and Pop Culture podcast.
Yeah.
YouTube streaming.
Our numbers are lagging that a little, but I think we'll see when they update it. I'm sure that'll reflect in our streaming
the new
numbers.
data, we'll have to follow up on that. But I think you're right. I think the tricky thing is, even like the industry people are in those quotes, like, it's just like, where does this fit in? And like, where does this fit in as a Christian? Because like so much of we think of like pop culture engagement, entertainment. You think of like, what's the new movie Hollywood released this week? Like still very, in some ways, still very working within the framework of like pre-YouTube. Like I know YouTube's been around a long time now, but like sort of the explosion of YouTube, like sort of still very much sort of old school of like, well, Hollywood's going to release a movie every week, and that's sort of the big thing that's going to influence shape society, and where it's like, well, like, but more people are actually engaged with content that's not the big Hollywood movies, like, so like in one sense there's a case to be made that like Christians should be way more focused on like, how is social media, how is like YouTube influencing, what are the messages and stuff, and less on what's the ideologies of this one movie that people are going to go see. I think kind of the counterpoint to that is just that, like, I think because YouTube is so expansive that in some ways it ceases to be influential on a more unified cultural level. Like it's, you might have 10 times the amount of people watching YouTube as this movie, but those people are all watching completely different things, disconnected, Whereas like, a new Dune 3 comes out and it's like, well, like we're all talking about this one thing. Like there's a conversation to be had about this one movie that still makes it in some ways more crucial or more like culture shaping, or at least more like visible than 10 people that are watching 10 different YouTube channels.
Yeah, well, there's like a diffuse nature of YouTube. I think that's what makes it hard, especially, for Christians. Yeah.
Or at least the hope behind it, sort of why we evaluate things like movies beyond just like, is it safe, not safe, good for kids, not good for kids, like where we actually look at the different stuff going on. Like I feel like because of things like YouTube shifting the landscape, like I think the days of just, okay, if we need to protect our kids from entertainment, like we need to just sort of go to this website and like see how this one movie, is this safe, just tell us yes or no, and like, because we're quickly going to the time where you can't do that. You can't do that for YouTube. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to have, we do a lot of reviews here at the Collision. We're not reviewing every YouTube video that's, coming out. Like I feel like there needs to be a shift in the way we approach this, of less just, hey, we need to know if these 5 or 6 things, released in July are going to be good for our kids, or if we should watch them, or what they mean. And we need to start moving more towards, like, we need to equip people not just to engage with like this movie, but like, engage with movies, think critically about entertainment in a way that they can carry those principles, those approaches with them when they're watching stuff that there isn't reviews for, and people, YouTube channels or creators that people haven't covered. Like, more an emphasis on that. Sort of like the idea of like the equivalent would be like apologetics in church. Like, I think sort of the days of just, hey, memorize these 3 arguments and then like go spring them on people. Like, no, like we actually just, more than that, we need to teach young adults to like, and grown adults to like think critically and like about faith and be able to have those thoughtful conversations, not just sort of memorize a bunch of data. Like, I feel like stats like this just make me think like we need, as the church, need to emphasize a lot more like equipping people to engage with culture and like think critically about what is a movie beyond just, this one movie has too many swear words for me, so I'm not going to watch it. Like,
Yeah.
Because we're quickly entering the uncharted frontier where like, that's just not going to be a viable approach for the church to be able to cover all these things for people that haven't learned to think critically for themselves.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes down to having tools in your toolkit that allow you to help make decisions for yourself and your kids across platforms and mediums, and not just like, one specific movie at a time. Like, okay, this is good, that's bad. Like, we need to be able to think about this holistically, so that, again, kids are getting phones at earlier ages, like we talked about last week. And there's far more dangers sort of in the social media realm than there are in, movie X is good or bad, or, has bad influences or good influences in it. Like, so I think being able to think about things holistically is going to be way more important moving forward, especially in just the sort of the diverse media landscape that we are facing now than it's ever been before.
Yeah, and I even do it with my kids. Like, I do my best to, guard them from seeing a bunch of junk that they shouldn't be seeing at that age. But like, I'm also very intentional about like probably the biggest part of me protecting them is just helping them learn to think through and for themselves how to, if they do see things in films, like they can think through that and process that even at a young age.
Yeah.
And, about different worldviews and stuff. And I feel like that's going to protect them long term more than just, trying to hold back the tidal wave of godless entertainment.
Yeah.
And hoping that, the kids don't get wet. But hey, again, if you're watching us on YouTube, share your thoughts in the comment section, or if you're listening to us, send us an email, send us a comment, let us know sort of how you, where you watch your entertainment and how you navigate some of that shifting entertainment landscape.